The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
If you're building or buying or selling a home, the Real Estate Crew's got news for you at the Real Estate House Party.
With attorney Rick Carter,
Real Estate House Party.
paralegal Kathy Holsthausen,
Real Estate House Party. Come in, have fun.
and comedian Tony V. Now, here's real estate attorney Rick Carter.
Welcome and thanks for joining us here on the Real Estate House Party.
Where the heck is Tony?
Tony's in Aruba, vacationing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he's not vacationing. He's working.
He's working 20 minutes 20 minutes a day.
30 minutes a day. But he has to stand up for the
do the
entire
math.
time.
Do the
The
math.
poor guy.
I know,
He's overworked.
He's overworked. That's why you asked me, we'd like to be comedians. Think about that. They get the same amount of work we do, pay for 20 minutes.
And I have to work 40
Right.
hours.
This is what we do for buyers. We make sure their title's good. We make sure their plot plan's
We
good.
do?
We make sure their MLC's good.
Is that what I was supposed to be doing?
No, the other people in the office do that.
No, today. So today, what are we going to do? You
Today,
tell us.
we're going to get a lot today. We're going to talk about golf.
I'm out of here.
No, we're not. We're not.
Oh.
But we're going to talk about
Well, first of all,
analogous to a golf
Do you know what today
swing.
is?
Today is redheaded.
National Redhead Day, and
Yeah.
I have a 22-year-old redheaded daughter.
You do.
Yes.
You do.
Yes, and so, hi, Caitlin.
And she is.
Happy National Redhead Day, honey.
And she's the quiet wallflower like you, right?
I was blessed with very loud. I didn't mean large. I meant loud children. So
You
our
were blessed
house
with lunch.
No, they are. They're all right. Our house is a very loud house.
You have a very loud house.
Yeah.
Takes after Stu, right?
Yeah.
Because you're so
Yeah,
quiet.
I'm so quiet
Yes,
and
yes.
subservient.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So this is what we're going to talk about today.
Golf.
Golf. If you have a picturesque golf swing, there's probably 8 or 9 steps to it. Right down the middle.
Wow.
Okay?
We're going to take your closing right down the middle.
Thank you. You're doing your own punchlines and everything. Your taglines.
I got something wrong with my headset.
Yeah, you're screaming in it.
No. Am I?
Just keep going on.
yeah.
Okay. No, it sounds better. It sounds better. Thank you. All right,
But what
go.
we're going to talk about is similar to that. There's like 8 or 9 steps once you sell your property and on what to do. To make it
Well, before
smooth
you
sailing.
even sell your property, you might want to hire an attorney.
Okay.
Right?
So that's a good point. You're already off script, but it's a good point.
Well, we never stay on script.
We're one of the few fields where, let me give you an example.
Okay.
Toothache. You pull the tooth out and then go to the dentist. That's what it's similar to.
I wouldn't do that.
No. Okay. All right. So that's my point. So this is one of the rare areas of law where everyone signs all the important documents and then comes to us.
And they ask you to review the purchase and sale agreement, and then you start to review it, and then you notice that it's all signed. So
Right.
there's really nothing you can do after you've
right.
signed that contract.
So they've already done, as a seller, they've already done
They've already
the
pulled the
listing
tooth.
agreement.
Yep.
They've already signed the listing agreement. They've already signed the offer. As a buyer, you've already applied for your loan probably.
Have you ever seen a listing agreement?
No.
No, but you know what I'm talking
Oh,
about.
I've seen it.
The print
Yeah.
and the print is so tiny, and I think that people get so excited about selling their house, they literally just sign. And you know how the joke is, you're supposed to read everything before you sign it.
Yeah.
Isn't that probably one of the places that people just start signing and?
Okay, so this was going to be on the podcast for all our brokers to watch too, but now...
Oh, can you start over? No, I'm not saying the listing agreement is bad. I'm just saying they don't know what they're signing.
Right.
They're
right.
signing up to have their house listed.
And usually it's not a problem, right, Kathy Holzhauser?
Usually it's
Cardle, our
not.
office? Okay.
I don't work there.
You're not going to after the show.
Oh, good.
Usually our broker
I have
listing...
plans for the end of the week.
Usually our broker agreements are fine. Yeah, but sometimes there could be some items in there so that we'd want to take a look at, but we usually don't get that opportunity to, right?
And the offer.
And the offer is the one that really is the problem from our end because the offer gets signed, and in Massachusetts, that's a binding contract. as we know.
Right.
So all the important stuff that is in your deal should be in that offer.
Right.
All right. So
So give us an example, because you're talking to people that might be selling their house. What are some of the examples of
the biggest thing is you usually get the important stuff correct. You usually get the closing date right. You usually get the financing date right, or whatever. Usually it's the items like fixtures.
whether they're taking the refrigerator or not?
Exactly. There should be an inventory list of what's being taken.
Well, and the other thing that might be in the offer that might not make it to the purchase and sale agreement is finding suitable housing.
Yep.
Or
or if you're allowing them to stay in the property after the fact.
Yeah. Or if
that should be in the offer.
They're waiting for you to sell your house before they'll buy the house.
Yep. Subject to buying or selling a house. Yep.
So that sometimes doesn't make it to the purchase and sale agreement, and that's highly problematic.
Or vice versa. It doesn't make it to the offer. So once the offer is signed, then you have a buyer's attorney say, well, we never agreed to that.
Right.
So it never made it to the offer. It's hard to get into the purchase and sale.
Right.
So
you can do it.
We can do it.
I've seen you do it, but it depends on who your players are. So
we've had a few lately where
you've saved the deal.
I have to tell the other attorney, all right, let's take our attorney hats off
and talk as humans
through this and talk as humans there. But you hit a good point. The fixtures. I had one where this is a good one where they said there was a very nice designer kitchen island.
Yeah.
And they said to the broker they wanted it, and the broker said, let me talk to the seller about keeping it with the property. So that could be interpreted two ways. Is it a statement or is it a question?
Oh, I see.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So is it a definitive, let me talk to the seller about keeping it here, or let me talk to the seller about keeping it here?
Right.
You know what I mean? So there was confusion on that.
In theory, if there's an island
it was a movable island.
Okay,
though.
So I guess as a buyer or a seller, you have to make that distinction whether it is a movable item, because then we could get into the whole thing. What is a fixture?
Well, the buyer thought it was fixed to the property.
Right. How would
so
she
the buyer
know?
said, "Oh, why isn't the kitchen island staying after all?" And then the seller said, "No, we're taking that." They were asking us if it was going to stay, but so the point is, if it's a gray area like that, you want to put in the offer. Want to put in the purchase and sale.
Another one that comes up is like a light, like a chandelier or something.
Right. So if you have a chandelier passed down to you and you want to take that, you got to mention that in the offer.
Right.
And then that has to be brought along to the purchase and sale.
And then you're gonna replace it with a kind of like a light kind.
Usually with the buyer will say, well, you can't just leave wires hanging out of there when you take your chandelier. So yeah, put another fixture in. We don't want wires hanging out.
Right. And you always hope that the seller is like thinking about the buyer when they're taking things out and moving and scratching walls and stuff like that. But some people just don't care.
Yes, exactly. We've had the extreme where some sellers thought they could pull a fast one, and the purchase and sale, you got to leave all fixtures. And he took all the fixtures out and he downgraded the fixtures and left those in the property. Yeah, you can't do something like that. So, but you're right. At this stage, the seller has already picked out the broker. Mm-hmm. We're picking it up from the offer. They've already staged the house. They've already photographed the house. Statistically, if you read, any of the stats out there, you're going to sell a house quicker if there's a broker involved.
Without a doubt.
If there's some sort of professional photography and the staging. We're not going to get into crazy staging today, but you got to have it in good shape.
But they know what to do.
They know what to do.
So
rely on them. You don't want to get too crazy. You don't want to put in $25,000 bathroom if you're only going to net out $15,000. But you probably want to do some stuff, some touch-up stuff, declutter, and depersonalize.
Yep.
We had a situation where we were selling a basketball player, is a very famous basketball player, and the broker said, we had a little trouble selling this property because all of his trophies were hanging around. Any buyer that came in kind of, assumed that was his house, couldn't really identify it as their own.
Right.
So you want to depersonalize the property.
Right.
So we've already gotten through that, but we've gotten to the offer stage. So what do we do from the offer? So as you said, you want to make sure that they have a lead paint form already signed. We're not going to get into that too much today. Have it initialed in the correct spot, checked off in the correct spot. You're going to have it signed in the property address identified. So that takes care of that. I've lost you on the lead paint form.
No, I was jumping forward on the. So go ahead. I'm following you.
Then you have to ask during the offer stage. You probably want to get from the buyer a pre-approval letter.
Yep.
And we've learned that the pre-approval letters are only as good as what the
paper that it's written on.
No, really, yeah, exactly.
No,
right. The information that they've given to the lender.
Right. But a lot of the pre-approval letters now, they have that desktop underwriting.
Yes.
So they've already asked for your social security number, and they've already run it through.
Right.
They've decided that they could probably lend you the money, pending any other issues that may arise after you've turned.
And this is why it's probably another good reason to have a broker. Usually they can discern if there's a decent pre-approval letter as opposed to.
Plus, it's a very small industry, right?
Right, and they'll know which lenders involved with.
Yeah, so, and some lenders are better than others, believe it or not.
And they might say, oh, this lender gave a pre-approval letter, they must be in good shape. But we've had situations where buyers have given information to their lenders like, oh, yeah, don't worry about it. I get my child support payments very regularly. And then we find out they don't get that and they don't get approved. So.
Or they haven't filed tax returns, or we've had a bunch of different things come up.
Right. If they haven't filed the tax returns, I had a guy the other day.
Or they have a fake Social Security. No. This stuff comes up.
Didn't we have one buyer, the lender asked him for his Social Security number, and he said, which one? Which one do you want?
It's one of our lenders, one of our originator stories.
And we had a seller the other day where I was worried about, because they get a 1099 at the end of the closing if it doesn't meet certain criteria. So we're really worried about, his Social Security number, boom. And he says, it doesn't matter. I haven't filed tax returns in 10 years. So it wasn't as big of an issue with him. But that's something.
Well, they're going to... All right. He's probably going to get in trouble sometime.
All right. So we're going from the offer now to the purchase and sale stage.
Good.
In the purchase and sale stage, there might be some representations in that purchase and sale that the seller might be asked of. You got to be very careful on that. So,
well, as a seller, you should let the broker sell your house. Let the real estate agent sell your house. You shouldn't be there, and you shouldn't be squawking about this or that, or making representations. The broker is the one to convey the information.
And for the brokers that are watching, they shouldn't rely on the seller's information to represent the house. Like they shouldn't say, oh, it's definitely a two-family.
Oh, I was just going to say that, right. Oh, no, it's not in a flood zone. Right. Yeah, right. Do your homework.
Right, exactly. Because we've had supposed two families, and you ask it's been assessed as a two-family. You go down to the tax collector's office, it says two-family, and then you call the building department and says it's not a two-family.
Right.
So you got to be careful.
There were no building permits pulled for.
So that's another one. So there's a representation that's made in the purchase and sales that you got to keep an eye on. So a lot of the all the purchase and sales seem to have a trend, and lately they're all asking if permits have been closed out. So you want to call the town hall beforehand and make sure all the permits are closed out if that's what you're going to be representing. You got to be careful in representations. We've had some, it's not that, have you had water in the basement? I had a person, just really deliberate about that. I said, well, have you had water in the basement? It's a yes or no. And he says, well, I only had it once, and I had it in 2007. And I said, well, it's still yes. Right. It's still yes. So don't worry about it. I usually try to, if they're asking you for a representation, put it in there. And sometimes you shoot yourself when they get so defensive and they're almost too specific. Well, yeah, I did get water in the basement. I had this last year. Well, I did have water in the basement. It's just a little bit in the middle, and sure enough, after the closing, it was bubbling all around the perimeter of the So sometimes having, just leave it at that. If you have water in the basement, you have water in the basement.
Right.
Disclose.
And let the buyer decide if they want to take the chance on buying the house. Don't make their decision for them.
Right, exactly. And we're finding out, we got to make sure that all the sellers are on board. Both spouses.
Really?
Yeah. Because we've had a few of those there where the husband is gung-ho on everything, sign everything up, and the wife is
reluctant.
I said, I didn't want to sign. So That's usually the bigger areas, but a lot of times it's on small stuff. Well, I didn't know you were giving away the refrigerator. Have the sellers, everyone on board for the purchase and sale.
And I'm going to sidetrack because that's what I do.
That's what you do.
Well, you guys usually do it, but I'm going to do it because you guys aren't here. If you're a seller and you're married, but you're the only one on the property, your spouse does have to sign off his or her homestead rights.
Yep.
So we have people, fight us on that. They say, my husband moved to Jamaica.
Oh yeah.
So now we have to discern if that was his primary residence principal residence. So
and why is that? Because of the homestead laws in Massachusetts.
They have automatic homestead rights to that property.
So a spouse, if they live in the property,
they cannot
as their principal residence.
Yep, they cannot be displaced from the home because of incurred debt.
That's what's kept Stu in his house for so long.
Stu doesn't own the house.
Yeah.
We did the closing, right?
No, you did the closing.
I told him that one time. He got all upset. He wanted to see the deed.
I don't blame him. All right, so now we're going to prepare for the closing.
Really?
So I got a few things that you probably have never heard out of my mouth before. Do a title search very early in the process.
What?
All right, let me tell you my story, and this is where it's coming from. I know you've never heard this before, but I got a call one weekend for a seller who was closing on Monday, and he had originally bought from a developer. The developer never signed off on the town. We won't get real technical.
Yeah,
but
the fee in the street?
Yeah, it's even more. He was supposed to get signed off on the house itself. Never got that. The Conservation Commission never signed off on the lot itself, so there's order conditions on the property. Plus, there was like 2 or 3 construction loans still on the property from his original closing.
I hope we didn't do that closing.
We did not do the closing. No. But he wanted me to take care of it all by Monday, and this is sad. I'm not mocking it all, but he needed the money on the Monday, because he was going for kidney dialysis and needed the money to pay for that.
But you had to wait till Monday to
start that.
to town,
and it's going to be like a 4 or 5 week process to get all those, because to get an order of conditions released, you usually have to go in front of the board and all that.
Right.
So what we have said in the past is, why don't you do that title search of your property? Maybe you can tell people what a title search is.
A title search is a 50-year search of the land. Some people say, oh, I don't need a title search because I just my house is brand new. We just put a house on it. But it's not the house, it's the land that the house sits on. So we do a 50-year title search and make sure that all the mortgages in the past have been discharged, and that it's been correctly conveyed from party to party. And
so we have to certify title if we're the bank's attorney, we have to certify title to that new owner that we've looked into all this.
Yeah.
And some closing attorneys might not do that till a couple weeks before the closing.
But I love the questions, like if you call, and we have to order these title searches with independent title examiners, and they say, well, when's it closing? It doesn't matter when it's closing, because if I tell you it's closing next Friday, we'll get it next Thursday. Next Thursday is too late to fix anything. Right. So the most things we see are undischarged mortgages, and someone will say to me, I paid that off a long time ago. That's all well and fine, and I'm sure you did, but the discharge or release of that mortgage never made it to the Registry of Deeds. It's a title problem, and most attorneys I know will not close with a title problem like that.
So we probably should do that almost at listing stage.
Yeah.
And then we get Renee Carter or Kathy Holzhauser all over that, and then they start.
Not me. Not me.
So
the only thing I do is show up at this podcast. No, I can do it.
So at least we're working on it for 6 or 7 weeks as opposed to a week before the closing, right?
Right.
All right. So we got our title search done, right? Mm-hmm. We should probably, if you have town sewer, you might want to call the Board of Health to see what needs to get a Title V certificate.
Right. Because that's required in the state of Massachusetts, right? To sell your houses, to have
a pass Title V.
Right. And if it fails, it's going to hold up your closing.
Right.
Because the
you
septic,
won't be able to close.
Right. Because it's a big project.
Right.
And it's a lot of money. So if if you don't have a lot of money into the property or a lot of equity in the property, it could be a showstopper actually, right?
Right. So you might as well find out early enough.
Yeah. And how long do those last?
You could have, it depends, each town's a little different. Depends on if you pump the station, but you could probably have it, it could be a couple of years. But
a couple of years.
But you got to talk to the town.
Okay.
Because each town, the state has their guidelines, but the town might be more restrictive.
So when you're putting your house,
I would look into it right as I'm listing my house.
Okay, so that's a really good idea.
Yeah, so they should track that down.
What about
smoke certificates?
Yeah.
They probably should. And I know all the brokers say, no, I have one delayed now because just couldn't get it in on time.
I think we've talked about this before, but
that's okay.
We
this information is so important. We can say it a couple times.
I know, but so somebody said we can't get this. They can't come out. They only come out every other Tuesday or whatever.
Yep.
So, and we were supposed to be closing on Monday, and so they're like, can we close Monday and we'll drop off the smoke start on Tuesday, and then you guys can record. And we said no, and because we have to, by law, we have to have a smoke certificate, right? That Tuesday, the fire department went out there, and it turned into a huge problem. Not only did they not get the smoke certificate, half the rooms that were supposedly bedrooms aren't even bedrooms, right? And
so that five bedroom went down to 3 bedroom, and they were closing in 2 weeks. And the buyer said, "Well, I thought I was buying a 5 bedroom."
And then the purchase price went down by $50,000 or $60,000.
That's how they
That's a huge problem. Huge problem. So I guess getting a smoke certificate a couple of weeks before you're closing is probably a great idea.
All right.
And that includes CO2 as well,
Yep.
right?
Very good.
Yep.
Yep. There's new
I
requirements.
think some people have been in their houses forever, never put them in and never give it a thought.
Oh, yeah. You're right. But there's new regulations. Yeah.
But then the problem is if the fire department comes out 5 days before the closing, you're going to have to get an electrician to hardwire all your detectors, and then they may not come out for another week, and then you're past your closing date. And so, yeah, it's important.
So it's worth people knowing what they should have before they have them.
So call the fire department right as you list the house. Yep. Yeah, and they're good for 60 days. Most closings are done before 60 days.
And worst case scenario is you have to reapply for it.
Right.
They'll come right out because they know that they came out, saw that you're.
We've always thought that's probably the lesser of two evils. If you have to get it,
if you pay another $50, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing with the town is if you have utility bills, a light or water bill, if you pay a municipality on those, then you have to get those paid off.
I've never heard of that.
I know. This is educations for everyone on this panel.
I'm only kidding, but I have had people say that to me. I didn't know I needed a final light.
But related to that is now some towns are holding that water bill hostage, whereas if you don't change the lead pipes over, we're not going to give you a paid water bill.
Right.
So you might as well call on that early. What do you think about that? Is that crazy?
It's exhausting.
I know, but we're almost there. If you're selling a condo.
You need a 6D certificate.
Which is what?
It's a certificate saying that there are no unpaid common expenses. Right? You don't think I know that answer?
No, I know you know it. Yeah, you invented the 6D certificate. So,
I did.
So you also might need a certificate of insurance, which names the borrower and the lender as insured.
Yep, or a waiver of right of first refusal.
In some cases, yeah. The developer might be able to buy that property back, so you got to get a waiver of that.
Right.
So that takes care of the condo. All right, so we're almost there. Big thing. What?
You got to get a moving company lined up.
We've seen this repeatedly lately. We don't have sellers moving out of the property. The longer you've lived in the property, the longer it seems for you to get the stuff out. You just have not estimated how much stuff you have in the property.
Right, and we had a moving company here last week or the week before, and you think that you can get your dining room done in an hour and your living room done in an hour. It's not the case.
Right. So get the moving, because in the purchase and sale, it says you have to have the property in broom clean condition before the person's walking.
So they have to get out before the closing?
I know.
It's just a crazy thought.
This is crazy information we're given today. So you got to keep an eye on that.
It's amazing how many sellers are not prepared to leave on the day of closing.
Right.
It's amazing to me.
So we get to the closing. So what should we talk about the closing? So now you've moved out. We've talked about it's got to be in broom clean condition, which is different than professionally cleaned, right? So you don't have to worry about that quite as much. We've already talked about a second spouse that does not own the property but has lived in the property.
Has to sign off.
He or she has to sign off,
Yep.
right? Make sure you bring your valid identifications because of why people bring in their
Fake wives.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So we've heard a few situations with that where this was years ago. So we're kidding about it now, but about 10 years ago, sellers didn't.
More than that.
weren't even bringing their ID. So I think it's a famous case around the Haverhill area where one of the politicians brought his wife to sign off on the deed, and
Did the broker recognize?
Oh, that was the other one.
Oh.
Where the broker recognized. That was very smart. They said, that's not the wife that was on the mantle picture. So they they nipped that in the bud. But you got to make sure you bring your IDs to the property. You got to make sure the closing disclosure is accurate. What's a closing disclosure?
It's a form that shows the sale price, how much you're selling the property for, and then it takes out all your closing costs.
Right. So
one of the major closing costs is the deed stamps.
Right. So in Massachusetts, what would that be?
$4.56 per thousand.
So let's do some math. Case Ed's not listening. So if you're selling for $1 million, what would the state tax stamps be on that?
$4,560.
Right. So people.
How's that?
That's pretty good.
Thank you for the softball.
Right,
So if you're selling it for $792. Yeah, exactly.
So
but
it's not nothing. People need to be aware that
Right,
this
'cause-
is coming.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And there's going to be a tax adjustment.
Let's talk about the stamps and then we'll jump into that. And if you're selling in Massachusetts and then moving to New Hampshire, which a lot of people do,
double whammy.
yeah, because then you move to New Hampshire on that $1 million property. It's how much per thousand?
$15 per thousand, split between the buyer and the seller, so $7.50 per
So
thousand.
if they've sold $1 million house in Reading,
They pay $4,560.
Then they move to New Hampshire and buy the $1 million house as a buyer.
$7,500.
Yep. So they got to be aware of that.
So if your closing costs are off by about $15,000,
that's
whatever,
probably why.
That's why.
Right.
And
exactly.
we've actually, I think we've had a situation like that.
Because lenders don't know when they're disclosing that because they don't know in New Hampshire they have to pay that. And when they're trying to do a ballpark of what they're bringing to the next one.
Right.
But you're right. Then there's some tax adjustments. Then there's a mortgage payoff. And we've talked about this before. But your mortgage payoff is probably going to be a little higher than what you see online and on your mortgage statement.
What you see online is your outstanding principal balance. But you make your payments in arrears. So you're always going to be paying. In September, you pay for the month of August. So at closing, you're going to be paying all of August and some of September.
So if you have a $200,000 mortgage, and now you're closing on November 1st, you haven't paid your November 1st mortgage
so
payment.
you're going to pay all of October and a couple days in November.
Right. So about 2015 is going to be your payoff.
Right.
All right. So a nice touch we always say at the closing table, because I always try to tell sellers and buyers they might want to stay away, until everything's all said and done. But a nice touch for the seller to do is leave all their manuals to the appliances, things like that.
And the garage door openers.
Exactly. So we made it to the closing. After the closing, just a couple notes, and then we're going to recap everything and wrap everything up. So at the closing, you got to remember you don't get your proceeds that day, right?
Well,
I'm sorry.
You do.
You
could.
What's the criteria? When do you get your proceeds?
So you can't get your proceeds until the buyer's lender has funded the closing attorney's account, and you've gone to record.
Okay. And then you'll probably get your money.
And then you can get your money one of two ways, and we would need to say this out loud. If you want your money wired, I would do it verbally. I would never fax or email wiring instructions, and I would have a conversation with a closing attorney directly between you and them, in no other way.
And one of the tips for the check you get at closing. Sometimes you might have only your account in your name, but if it's two sellers, we've seen this lately where the check goes to husband and wife, and the account's only in the husband, they might not deposit that check. So how's that? So I think we're almost made it through everything here. So this is how we're going to recap. How's that? Really quickly. So if you're selling a piece of property, you probably want to get proactive. You want to probably check your title search. If you have
Or you just
If you-
call us.
if you-
we'll just take you through
We're
everything.
getting to that conclusion. We're going to get to that. You want to be proactive about your private septic system.
Yep.
You want
smoke,
to
smoke detectors.
Smoke detectors. So you're going to be proactive, and then for closing, you're going to bring a deed. You're going to make sure all municipal liens.
Wait a minute, I already have a deed.
Yeah, everyone says that. Well, I'll get my deed out from 1966.
So as a seller, you have to bring a new deed from you deeding the property into the buyers.
Right, exactly. So I like a certificate of title to a car.
But a seller's attorney will take care of that for you.
Right.
So
at closing, you got to bring all paid municipal bills.
or bring them and have
Yeah.
let the closing
One or
attorney know
other.
the amount.
They're going to be paid up. Smoke certificate, deed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've already given all your payoff
ID.
information and your ID.
And your wiring information if you're looking for your net proceeds to be wired.
And you're going to be good to go.
Right.
This is going to be our instructional video for all our sellers for now on. So how do we do? Good?
A.
A for effort.
All right. And if you have any questions, Carter Law can certainly help you out.
Yeah, just give us a call at 781-944-9222.
And that's it for the Real Estate House Party for today.
It wasn't a real party, but
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.